Well, look, as I've been saying, and we'll come back to all of that, I mean, you can't believe it, you can't get your head around it. I always think of those things in terms of what would I do? You wouldn't know what you'd do. Up over your knees in sludge, eh? Look, as I've been saying, amongst the many urgent reforms needed to fix the culture in Canberra, many are simple. Random breath testing. In most businesses, if someone arrived drunk, they'd be sacked. Surely it's possible to be a family person, a mother or a father, and still be a politician, but not with these stupid hours that have to be worked. One such person is the very talented Senator James Paterson from Victoria. He's the head of the powerful Parliamentary Joint Committee on Intelligence and Security, but he's the father of 2 children under the age of 6. He joins me from Melbourne. James, thank you for your time. How hard is it to have better and saner hours for each parliamentary session? How hard is that?
Sometimes I think we're a little bit guilty in politics, Alan, of thinking that we're special and that we're unusual and that we have to do things very differently to how everyone else does things. But the truth is actually we're just normal. We're people like everyone else, and the kind of things that improve culture in other organisations probably would improve culture in political life as well. So as you say, sane hours, appropriate use of alcohol and other products is going to lead to a more family-friendly environment and a better culture and probably happier people and more diverse people.
But see, James, that we've had these problems in recent weeks with young staff. Now, it's the nature of the hours which acts as a disincentive for experienced and married staff. So you get a whole heap of young people, overpaid, inexperienced, too much time on their hands. Many of the hours you say you'd have to work would be illegal in many workplaces.
And look, Alan, there are a lot of Australians who work long hours and work very hard, and I don't want to make it sound like this is special pleading on behalf of politicians or our advisors who are well paid for the jobs that they do, but we do require them to be away from their homes for about 20 weeks of the year to accompany us to Canberra. And when they're in Canberra, some of the hours they work are punishingly long hours. They start very early in the morning and finish very late at night. And if they're a retail worker and we required that of them, that would be against the award. It would be illegal.
It would. So, I mean, why can't you change the sitting calendar, work for more weeks than you currently do, and work normal working hours in each of the weeks?
We could, but that's the trade-off, Alan, because I think for some young fathers like me and young mothers in particular, they don't want to be away from their electorates and their families for too many more weeks either. So I would say actually there's a lot we could do more efficiently in Parliament. I think some of the things we do in Parliament are a waste of time, frankly, and if we cut a lot of that out, we could both reduce the hours and reduce the time away from home and attract better quality people into the system.
Well, now listen, I know you've been very strong on this free speech issue. While I've got you here, free speech is something that's been progressively eroded. The former High Court Judge Robert French devised a free speech code for universities. What have universities done about it? I mean, you lined up these people from the University of Queensland in Senate estimates. Now, I say to my viewers, this was in relation to the gutsy 21-year-old Drew Pavlou, who was peacefully vocal about the Chinese influence at UQ. He organised an anti-China protest defending democracy in Hong Kong. This was in 2019. He criticised peacefully China's behaviour in relation to Hong Kong. 200 pro-Chinese Communist Party students showed up. There are videos showing these people screaming, tearing down posters, playing the Chinese national anthem and assaulting the pro-Hong Kong students with thuggish behaviour. These universities are dependent on Chinese money. The University of New South Wales gets over $700 million. The University of Queensland about half of that. Then we've got 13 Confucius institutes, 54 Confucius classrooms. So James Paterson, this young man, Drew Pavlou, was expelled from the university following a 186-page dossier compiled against him. You tackled the Vice-Chancellor, Peter Hoy, on this at Senate estimates. He had no answers. Listen to this exchange.
I'm surprised that you don't have any personal reflections on that.
Well, I do have personal reflections on it.
You're just not willing to share them?
No, I have shared them with you. I accept that it is absolutely my view that Mr. Pavlou very strongly believes in the need to stand up for what he believes in.
And so, James, for standing up for what he believes in, Pavlou was expelled.
Alan, you've had Drew on your program a number of times, and thank you for the support you offered him. He had an awful experience as a 20-year-old student at the University of Queensland. And what shocked me so much about the evidence of Peter Hoy and also Peter Varghese, the Chancellor of the University of Queensland, before the committee, was that they showed no apparent empathy or concern or sympathy for the experience that Drew went through. I mean, he received hundreds of death threats to him and his family, and they had no real reflections on the way in which they handled it. They said they wouldn't do anything differently if their time came around again. In fact, Peter Varghese said the only mistake that the university made was it didn't defend itself more strongly in the media throughout that. And I'm deeply disturbed by the culture at our universities.
And we should continue.
Mishandle this so badly.
We should continue to be disturbed. Both those men you saw on screen there have been rewarded with massive new 5-year contracts. One is the Vice-Chancellor of the university and the one's had another 5-year contract as Chancellor. No one who directed the University of Queensland efforts to expel this young student, no one's ever been punished. The Chinese Consul General in Brisbane is on the university's academic staff, enjoying professional status. He praised the pro-Chinese Communist Party students for their, quote, patriotic behaviour. I mean, James, does the federal government intervene here? We fund these people, for God's sake.
And Alan, that part of the episode was particularly troubling. The Consul General's behaviour was so out of line that the Foreign Minister took the unusual step of personally, publicly condemning him. And yet Peter Varghese, the Chancellor of UQ, said it's fine for that Consul General to remain an honorary professor at UQ because the comments he made were in his capacity as a Consul General, not in his capacity as an adjunct professor at the university. Like that's a meaningful distinction and not a totally artificial one. I think that reflects incredibly poorly on the university and its moral compass, that it wasn't willing to take any disciplinary action against its academic who performed appallingly, but they pursued a student with hundreds of thousands of dollars of expenditure of student fees and taxpayers' money.
But I mean, Drew Pavlou is the only person sanctioned by the university since that incident back in 2019. Where on earth does free speech fit into this when the bloke's defending democracy?
Exactly, Alan, and those students who allegedly assaulted him and others, or assaulted a number of people that day, were not pursued with anywhere near the same level of vigour that Drew Pavlou was pursued. And it shows really misplaced priorities on behalf of the university. This is a university which has been embroiled in a number of controversies with China. It allowed 4 courses, undergraduate courses in the university, to be directly funded by the Chinese government. No Australian university should allow a foreign authoritarian power to fund courses to our students.
Just finally, what sanctions, though, has the federal government exercised against the University of Queensland in response to this kind of behaviour?
Well, none specific against UQ, but 2 things have come out of it. Firstly is this inquiry that I'm leading at the Intelligence and Security Committee. It wouldn't be happening without this incident, and we will make recommendations, so watch this space, Alan. But secondly, universities are now subject to the Foreign Relations Bill, which allows the Foreign Minister to cancel international agreements that they enter into if she deems it's not in Australia's national interest. I don't think that legislation would have passed, including universities, if it wasn't for these sort of incidents. And I think their peers at other universities who handle this better should look at UQ and say, we are in this position today in part because UQ has so mismanaged this issue.
Gee, I'll tell you what, it takes a long, long time for a young 21-year-old to see anything like justice. We're very, very grateful for your intervention on this, James Paterson. You are an outstanding young man, and this is hope for the Liberal Party at a time when people are saying, oh, the Liberal Party's in a mess, certainly in Victoria. This young man's a Victorian, Senator James Paterson. Thank you, James, for your time, and we will talk again.
Thank you, Alan.